Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to PBA at Noon. I'm Paul Benwell, and I'm joined by my colleague, Sophie Caesar. Today, we welcome back Core Resources. K-O-R-E is a symbol, and we're with the CEO, Scott Trebilcock. Core presented with us last June. Since then, they have been busy ticking off milestone after milestone. They've announced a positive PEA technical report on their Long Valley project, a spin-out, and a $7.5 million strategic investment by Eric Sprott, just to name a few. It's been a busy 10 months for Core, and I can't wait to hear what they have planned going forward. Kevin, if you're there, welcome again, welcome back, and you can start anytime, and we'll have questions for you at the end. So go ahead, Scott.
All right. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Sophie, for having me back. I'm just going to walk everyone through an update on the company. I'll try and focus on keeping this to sort of 15 minutes, a walkthrough for those that are new to the story, and certainly hitting some of those, some of that large amount of activity we've gone through since we met last June. It's been a whirlwind over the last year. It's been great to see Core get off the ground and start putting these, money into the ground in these assets and showing the kind of value we can generate from our portfolio. So Core Mining, our tagline is, building America's golden future. Core has now, since 2 months ago, 100% of our assets in the Great Basin in the United States in the gold business. We had some great BC exploration assets that we were investing in last year when we presented to this group. We did drilling. We put together a great package of land in the Caribou region of British Columbia. And we spun that out into a new company called Caris Gold. That was spun out to our shareholders. Shareholders were then offered a rights offering, and they're currently going through the listing process for those shares. We expect that to be public here in May, or maybe latest into June. The company's being led by Andrew Kipe, and we think a lot of Core shareholders are going to benefit from the great value that can be created through Caris being in a standalone company. That leaves Core strongly with its U.S. gold portfolio that it was founded with, and we're going to focus on walking through that over the next few minutes. I will be making forward-looking statements. If I attract interest from anybody on this call who wants to invest in the company, I encourage them to review all of our publicly disclosed documents, both on our website and on SEDAR, and thoroughly understand the risks before investing in a junior mining equity. So why am I a shareholder of Core? I'm a shareholder because Core has real, highly attractive gold projects in a safe and stable jurisdiction. We've got 3.9 million ounces of gold in the ground in California, in the Western deserts of the United States, right in the heart of the gold mining business in the US. We've got great exploration potential around those assets. Both assets have gone through preliminary economic assessments last year. Since we last presented here, we've completed one at the Long Valley project in the later part of last year. Both projects are technically simple, high return on capital, high IRR, simple heap leach gold projects. The management and directors remain large owners of the company, so we're aligned with shareholders, along with Eric Sprott, who has effectively sole funded the company, and he now owns 26% of the equity. Core has spent a lot of time over the last year building our environmental and social governance, or what used to be called corporate social responsibility profile, because we are moving forward to proposing a mine at our Imperial project this year by putting in our application to the Bureau of Land Management in the United States to start permitting our Imperial operation, and want to make sure we are on the ground doing it right to all stakeholders, being safe and respecting the environment in the places we operate. From a valuation perspective, I'll leave that up to the market to decide, but compared to peers, Core still looks cheap on several metrics, and that's certainly a way you can judge potential value creation in Core. The 3.9 million ounces we have are in two projects. The Long Valley project, which is in the Walker Lane trend, which crosses over the border from Nevada into California, just south of Reno, Nevada. And then our Imperial project has 2.2 million ounces. That is a 100% oxide gold deposit in Imperial County, California, right down near the Mexico-Arizona border. Came across this interesting analysis and asked them to, allow us to publish the data in our presentation from Agentis Capital Research. That's Michael Gray out of Vancouver. And he had put together this chart of all of the available oxide gold resources in the Great Basin of the United States. The Great Basin being the, Idaho, Nevada, California, Northern Arizona, where the bulk of the gold production in the United States comes from. And that production has been driven over the last 30 years largely by oxide gold deposits. So they've been heavily exploited and there's not very many left. And if you look at this chart, Core has the third largest oxide gold inventory available in the market today. And I think that will make Core very attractive to mid-tier miners that are looking to go into these low risk, I call it old school deposits that were mined in the 90s and 2000s and that are, that are still available today. So Core's got a great portfolio that should attract interest from the mid-tier mining companies. Both of the projects, we did complete modern mine plans on both of these projects in 2020. That was obviously a very significant milestone for the company. Those PEAs were led by an engineering team solely based in the United States by Mark Leduc, our Chief Operating Officer, who has experience operating in California through the time he spent at Newcastle Gold. And in fact, Mark was successful in configuring and getting the Castle Mountain project up and permitted. And that project has now been built and is operating inside Equinox Gold. So there is direct evidence that you can advance a gold project to production in California. Most importantly, though, both of the mine plans on both of these assets are fully compliant with the very stringent California environmental operating laws, and most importantly, closure laws, which require you to return your mining site effectively to a greenfield state. You have to fill in your open pits, recontour the ground, and revegetate when you're gone. And after your operation is done and reclaimed, you'll never know there was a mining operation there. And I think that is an incredibly high standard to meet. It costs a lot of money, and our projects are both fully compliant with that standard. And I think it's very important in today's world to build a social license to operate that you are on that very high bar of environmental standard and corporate social responsibility. The PEA show that the two projects, Long Valley, Imperial, are solid mid-tier projects. Long Valley's forecast to be around 100,000 ounces and Imperial around 150,000 ounces of annual production in their average mine plans, and backed with significant resources. So you see, we stand up well compared to the other listed US gold developers. Integra, Gold Standard, Liberty, Westvault, we're right there with high quality projects. Let's talk a little bit about California. California is the fourth largest US mineral producer in 2020, according to the American government. It is a significant contributor to the GDP and employment in California. The mines in California include the Boron Complex, a large Rio Tinto operation. The only operating rare earths mine in the United States operates in California. More recently, there are two permitted heap leach mines. The Soledad Mountain Mine came on in 2016. The Castle Mountain Mine just started production in 2020, going into commercial production late last year in Equinox Gold. Both evidence that you can run heap leach gold mining operations in California. There's also been a long life heap leach gold mine in Imperial County, California called Mesquite. It is also currently owned by Equinox Gold. It's produced over 6.4 million ounces, but it's only got a couple years of mine life left. And this mine is about 9 miles from our Imperial project, which is really our flagship and most advanced project. And that's an important fact because we've got a local community that knows and understands the risks of being living near a mining operation. We've got an experienced regulator because that Mesquite mine is also on federal land, like our Imperial project. And we've got a trained and experienced workforce working there. We've got all the infrastructure and suppliers, and all of those things de-risk the Imperial project by giving you access to all of the things that the Mesquite mine brings to the area. And staying on the Imperial project, we've got a large exploration story around our Imperial project. It's in Imperial County, California. The county is important because the county applies California law to federal land, and we are permitting a project on federal land. Zooming in a little bit, we've just last week put out a news release staking another 4,600 acres, bringing our total to 31,000 acres. That's a very large claim area around our Imperial project. And that's wide open for exploration. That's not just step outs and growth of the resource for Imperial. This is about making new multi-million ounce discoveries. And that's part of Core's strategy to deliver exploration as well as value from developing a mine at Imperial on the known resources. So we're pursuing a parallel path. Later this year, we plan to put in our application to the government on a mining operation for the Imperial deposit. And in parallel, we're pursuing these great exploration opportunities. So one of the things that's changed since the last time we spoke at this event was we've done a lot of exploration work on that claim area. The original claim area we claimed in 2019. We've been out in the field with a full-time geology team based at over my shoulder here. My virtual background is actually our office in Imperial County, California, staffed with local people, advancing a local project. They've been in the field prospecting. We found lots of anomalous gold in soils on the surface. We've used geophysics to look under the sand and gravel cover for mineralized bedrock underneath. And because there's this sand and gravel cover overlying the bedrock, this area has never been explored, despite having 3 deposits, 2 of which have already been mined on the belt in Mesquite and Picacho. So we've got a great exploration opportunity. Going forward from today, we should see several more news releases on prospecting coming out over the next several months. We're currently permitting a large set of drill pads to go start drilling some of these targets in the back half of 2021. So we will be out here drilling exploration targets, trying to make a new discovery, either on the Mesquite East target or over here towards our Imperial project later in 2021. So the drill will be turning, and we are currently working with the BLM on permitting those drill pads. Moving to Long Valley. Long Valley is an intact epithermal gold deposit. It was drilled in the 1990s by Royal Gold. The project is on U.S. Forest Service land. This is a picture in the background of what the land looks like. So it's currently being ranched under a cattle lease. And you can see this is an old Royal Gold drill road that's you can still see on the property today. What Core sees on the property, we've been out in the field conducting geological investigations, and we see the potential to grow the oxide gold resource, and we saw that potential actually going off the original claims. So when we talked last year, the green outline here was the claim block that we had, and it did contain the current resource and allow some growth. But what we did in November this past year is go out and stake an additional I think 12,000 acres around the project to make sure we capture the full potential of the resource growth, as well as potentially other deposits that are in this same epithermal gold system. We are currently permitting a small starter program with the U.S. Forest Service to go out and start testing some of the oxide step outs and to start to understand what we have on this project. So it's very much a classical PEA stage project. We've have a resource. We've done an economic assessment to show there's value to these ounces. We don't know if that's the right mine to build. We need to go and explore more. So we are going to be looking to step out and see if we can find more oxides, but also in parallel, we're looking to drill underneath the oxides, looking for high-grade sulfides, trying to open up a potential underground opportunity at this project, which could be, a more attractive mine to put forward in the future because it's got less disturbance. And the type of deposit we have here has the potential for high grades at depth. We don't know if they're down there until we drill. So we will be running some long drill holes on an angle as we drill some of these oxide targets down underneath, trying to find the boiling zone and some high grades at the Long Valley project. The people behind the company remain the same since we last talked, with one addition. Recently hired Liz Monger as our Vice President of Investor Relations. Liz spent her previous 9 years working for Midas Gold, very experienced in U.S. gold development stories and permitting, and a great network across the institutional and retail investor markets were really happy to have Liz on board helping Core do the same thing she did at Midas, take it from a startup to a multi-$100 million company. No other changes to board or management since we last talked. Mark Leduc still leading our operations on the ground from Denver, Colorado, where he's based. That's been a great boon during COVID because he's been able to continue to operate, go down to site, keep the project running. While I actually haven't been down in about a year because of COVID with travel restrictions. As we look to the vaccine rollout, we see that changing and getting back on site here over the next couple months. The cap structure, we did do one raise since we last talked. That was a $7 million when we added a charity component. So it brought in $7.5 million of cash to the company. That was in June of last year. That was 100% to Mr. Eric Sprott. That means Eric owns 100% of the warrants of the company. We also have some issued and outstanding options and restricted share units to motivate management. Fully diluted, we got 118 million shares out, so very tightly held share structure with the public float still only being 36%. We've attracted some analyst coverage. We've seen Nick Dion and Chris Thompson come out with full research and target prices. They both currently have a buy on the company, as well as some other brokers following in Toronto. So a growing following behind the company. Sort of I'll end with the sort of fundamental valuation. If you don't even consider exploration potential, which we believe is quite extensive at Core, we still look cheap compared to our peer companies who we see as the other US gold developers. So I do think there's good value creation potential inside Core, both from de-risking that NPV value, but also increasing that value by adding ounces with the drill bit, making new discoveries, and creating excitement through exploration. So just sort of wrapping up, Core is a US gold developer. We've got resources at 2 projects totaling 3.9 million ounces. We've done economic assessments that show we have very exciting, attractive projects at both projects. We've got exploration areas 100% owned, district scale around both projects, which allows us to explore and create energy in the market. We are pursuing a strategy of having American US staff on the ground in the United States, advancing US assets locally. And that's important to building our social license to operate as we move forward towards mine permitting at the flagship Imperial project. So why don't I be quiet and let's have a dialogue.
We have quite a lot of questions, and I know you touched on some of these, but let's just recap for our audience. So you recently announced staking and exploration program at Imperial. With so much prospective ground to cover, what are going to be your drilling priorities?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's one of those things that's actually I guess you could describe it as a challenge, but it's also a good challenge to have because you've actually got too much ground to work. So, the reality in the United States is, we're going through a full environmental assessment for our drill permitting program we're putting in Imperial. So you have to look far ahead to permit drill pads, so you don't have that ability to sort of explore, say, I want to drill a hole there and go drill a hole there. It's not as flexible a system. So right now we're permitting pads on, I can actually flip back up to the slide if we wanted to talk on the Mesquite East and the Imperial East target. And that's really based around the logic that the best place to find a mine is next to a mine. So we're looking for mineralization coming off the Mesquite group of deposits. And Mesquite is actually, I think, 4 related but distinct oxide and sulfide gold deposits. So that's a good place to look. We've got some anomalous golden soils as well as some geophysics that says that's a good place to start. And we're also permitting some pads down here around the Imperial East and coming just off our deposit, again, stepping out onto geophysics anomalies and golden soils. We also see some really exciting targets in between those two on Ogilvy, but we're not currently permitting pads there. So that'll be, we'll be looking to permit next year's drilling on those targets, as well as over on the eastern part of the district, where we also saw some really interesting anomalies that caused us to go stake more ground. So it will be a multi-year exploration process to cover this ground, but we've got a chance to find multiple new oxide gold deposits here and keep this camp going for another 30 years.
Wow, that's very exciting. Okay, let's continue here. question. Should we expect an updated resource estimate following the 2021 drilling program at Long Valley? Is that in the cards?
Yeah, no, we're not doing enough density to establish a growth in the resource. We're doing quite large, 100 and 200 meter step outs, looking to show that the mineralization does continue where, our prospecting and the geophysics shows it does on surface, as well as to test some of these deeper high grade targets. If we're successful with that drilling, we'll have to obviously plan a next phase of drilling, which would be either to infill some of those successful targets or maybe focus on the underground if we had some really exciting grades under there, which this deposit type shows are possible. So I guess, Long Valley is sort of a longer term, very classical PEA stage project. We've got a resource with certainly has economic value today. We believe there's some easy opportunities to grow that. And I'd expect another full season of drilling after this year's before we could think we'd get towards any additional resources.
Okay. When we're talking about Imperial's relationship, there's a question here about how is the local team's relationship with local stakeholders, Black Lives Matter? What's the reception been like?
Yeah, exactly. That's a good question. I hate to generalize a reception in a community or in a stakeholder group. As we know, we're all, in the mining business. There are NGOs and groups that don't like mining, and people that don't want mining in their backyard. And there's people that have very specific concerns, and then there's people that are interested in the economic development potential and other aspects that come along. All those things come in mining. And so we've got a local team, government relations, community relations, and Mark Leduc, our leader, that have spent, I forget the actual tally. There's something like 250 Zoom meetings and 50 site visits for local groups of all kinds to the property to make sure we're getting out there in the community. We're establishing, our local group has been very active during COVID and making sure we're helping out local charities and NGOs through the hard times during COVID, and establish Imperial Gold as a real local company looking to participate in the community and listen to all stakeholders. So as far as social issues, this is an 80% Latino county, so it's obviously important that we do business in both languages, Spanish and English, and that our workforce reflects the local community. So I think we are being respectful of all of these things, and making sure we engage with all stakeholders and listen to what they have to say.
Yeah, you did mention that the responsibility, the ESG part of it. So that's excellent. Great.
Yeah, it's very important. I think with the California comes just by its nature with very stringent laws that the NGOs pushed very hard for in the 1990s and 2000s. And we plan to live up and exceed all of those standards. I think we've got a really good story of completely returning the site to a greenfield state when we're done, as well as using some of our aggregate material from our aggregate operation, which is associated with the mine, to help conduct some remediation at an environmental problem called the Salton Sea in the north part of the county. Like, all of those things are positives that this mine will bring to the local area.
Great. So obviously, Scott, there's the question, the stock. So is there someone, I mean, the question here that we have is literally, who hates your stock so much? So just because you are progressing so much, and that the share price is dropping. So what can you maybe give us some light on what your thoughts on why that is?
Yeah, exactly. That's a good question. I mean, the whole gold market has gone quite soft. I mean, when Barrick can lose 40% of its value in the first quarter of this year, I think that was the number it was down. Like, the juniors, which have more leverage, are going to go down even more. So, Core has a very tight share register, and that allowed the company to appreciate very strongly last year. Look at the share chart last year. It also cuts the other way. When that marginal buyer goes away in the market, there's not that broad liquidity. And we've also never done a publicly marketed financing. So we've not brought institutions into the share register and others that, can support the stock at these levels. That will come as Core matures down the track here. We will be looking for some more capital later in the year to drill more aggressively. We don't have enough money to drill all of the drill pads that we're currently permitting, not even close, because we're permitting a lot of capacity. So I think we can, as core matures from a capital markets perspective, I think that'll change. So the reason, soft gold price, we had a really good run in 2020. I don't think it's any specific thing to core news flow I'm aware of.
So, and you did mention it. So I'm assuming that you will be going back to market to raise additional funds, correct?
For sure this year,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
We're permitting drilling at both Long Valley and Imperial. We would like to go do the right kind of work at each. We could hold back and just go like what we did in BC last year and do a very small program to show people the kind of results you can generate and then remobilize with more capital. But that's inefficient. And I think core is stronger than that. So that will be opportunistic. I mean, now's probably not the time, but we'll see where we go in the how much capital the market will, put forward with the gold price and those type of things. So we'd like to drill more aggressively, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, it's be interesting to see how it plays out in the next couple of months. How significant is the MOU with the U.S. Forest Service that you recently received at Long Valley?
Yeah, having an MOU in place is typically a big milestone in permitting. It means that the Forest Service or the agency, because it's the similar thing for the BLM, has accepted. It doesn't have any more comments on the plan you've put forward. So you've addressed all of the concerns they know right away, and they basically have said, okay, these are the groups we're going to hire to go do the environmental work and to make sure that we're doing all the right things on the ground. We have to do biological surveys, archaeological surveys. And in the case of Long Valley, we're reclaiming all of the sites as we drill the pads. We'll be moving away, reclaiming the pad and leaving no sign that we were there in this case. And we think that'll give us, that should give us a nice clear path. And the MOU is simply just an agreement with the agency about how they're going to do that work, because, you pay for it for the agency. So it does the work.
So you have a lot on the go. What would you say your priorities are, over the next 6 months, 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, so 6 to 12 months. So in pursuing the dual strategy, sort of there's three main things. First thing, and I think the questioners, and you've asked the right questions, the first thing is continuing to build that social license with local stakeholder groups for the Imperial mine. We'd like to put in the application, it's called the Plan of Operations, on the mine in the back half of 2021 to kick off the formal consultation process. But we want to make sure everyone knows who and what Imperial Gold is and what we're proposing, in their communities before that time. So stakeholder engagement, community relation is all ongoing. That's mandatory. And then make sure that we do a good job managing permitting for both of the exploration programs we'd like to do, and ramping up to actually do that work. Because as we know, there's been a lot of money raised in the sector, which is exciting, but it also means it's harder and harder to get service providers.
Yes,
So,
that's true.
it would behoove us to, book drillers sooner than later. So obviously all these factors go into considering how we're managed, but certainly build our social license on the ground at Imperial and get our two drill programs permitted, the top two things in the to-do list.
So then, those being your to-do list, what are near-term catalysts that investors should be watching for?
Yep. So, also, so as we prepare for drilling, particularly at, Imperial, our team is out in the field. We continue to do prospecting and more rounds of geophysics. We're doing a satellite alteration survey, and we continue to do work to pick what are the best targets from that, thankfully, wide array of targets we have on that huge Imperial land package. So there will be more news releases about, how we're sorting through the targets as those come together over the next few months as we move towards getting a permit. And then it would be drill permitting, and then, commencing drilling and starting delivering drill results here in the summer.
Okay, excellent. Paul, did you have a question or two?
Couple. What about infrastructure on place on both sites? Is it significant now, or is it going to be a lot of things that you have to do to?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So Imperial, to start with, has fully established infrastructure, really thanks to Mesquite. Their substation is within an easy connection to our project. Their employees currently drive by our project on their way to work. Thankful to the previous operator, Glamis Gold, they installed a water well, a production water well in the 1990s, as well as piezometers. So we have a very good idea of the hydrogeologic model for water. And all the other services are available locally in Imperial County, which is what makes it very attractive. Long Valley, it's never been thoroughly scoped, but there's access to road. There is nearby power. It looks like there's water, but that would all have to be sorted out in future studies. But there's not a lot of cost to it because of the location of the projects.
Okay. And do you own both properties outright? And do you have any royalties on them because of the past ownership?
Yes, correct. So there's a 2% royalty, 1% and 1% to different parties on each project. There's no royalties on the district expiration claims at either project because we've just acquired or claimed those recently. And we own 100% of our projects. The only outstanding payment, because we bought Imperial from Gold Corp, which is now Newmont, we do owe them $1 million when we pour the first gold bar, but that's a check I'll happily write.
I love that.
You talked about getting a workforce and things like that. Are the labs backed up down there, or where do you send your drill core?
Not as from our experience, not as badly as in Canada. We're seeing, at least for soil and sediment samples, rock chips, good turnaround for gold assays. So there doesn't seem to be any issue with capacity at the U.S. labs. Canada has been a big slow point for Caris, our sister company, because they've been doing not only fire assays for gold, but also metallic screens, because it's a nuggety gold deposit, and the metallic screening in particular has been very, very, very slow.
Got you. Now, one final question, then we'll wrap it up. Is silver of any consequence in your properties?
Yep, that's actually a great question. So Imperial, no, fortunately. It is a 100% oxide gold deposit, no sulfides,
Right.
nothing complex, no nasties. It's literally as simple and clean as mining gets. Long Valley is an intact epithermal deposit. And in the metallurgical testing that was done, there's about 100-to-1 silver ratio, so silver to gold. So there is a significant amount of silver, but it was never assayed, unfortunately, because in the 1990s, when gold was $300, they fire assayed gold and didn't even assay for silver. So that'd be something we'd have to add to the economics, down the track.
Well, Scott, you have your plate full moving forward, obviously. We will keep everybody up to speed on what's going on with your press releases, and we'll follow you for the next while. Thank you so much for your time today. Thanks to everyone who logged in, and we appreciate your time, Scott.
Yes, Paul, yours as well, too. Nice to talk
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.